On June 23rd, 2019, Philip Schwab killed Kaylynn Blue, his girlfriend of 7 years. He stabbed Kaylynn while she was in bed sleeping. She woke up and tried to run, but he continued to attack her, stabbing her 24 more times. Philip buried Kaylynn in a shallow grave in a flower bed at their home. Philip posted hundreds of Facebook status updates on the weekend he killed Kaylynn, many of them alluding to what he had done. Hey everybody, and welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Christy Brower, here with my sister, co-host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey Katie.
Hello.
How's it going?
It is going good.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
We are excited to be here on our Monday case. I'm really excited about this case because I have to tell you that this case is really the impetus for True Crime Paranormal. This case actually happened before we started this podcast by about 8 months.
Yeah.
But when it happened, I saved everything, screenshotted, saved everything that I could on my phone. I was fascinated by this case, and it really is what started me thinking about doing a true crime podcast.
Yeah.
And here we are now doing this case.
Yeah.
That's
and this case hit the news just recently, and we went, how have we not done this case?
Right. Yeah. How have we not done this case? The actual impetus for this podcast. Well, it just finally resolved. And so I feel like it's a good time to share it because we can share the whole story.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's a biggie. Ooh.
It is. It is a biggie. It is a local one to us. I know you guys hear us share things that we happen in our community quite a bit, but I got to tell you that I doubt there are any other podcasters out there sharing Idaho cases.
Probably not many, no.
I mean, other than the Daybell Vallow case, which we know lots of people are sharing, but other than that, I mean, it's pretty much us talking about the stuff that happens in Idaho. And, you know, we have murders here just like everybody else does. People
and
like
as
to
you
think
guys
that,
know, sometimes some freaking whoppers,
Yeah, sometimes some really, really weird ones. And this is definitely one of those weird ones.
Yeah.
So this all started on June 23rd of 1999. 2019. What am I? I've got all my nines mixed up. I know. You're like, it did? What? Wait a minute. No.
I thought maybe you were backing up to when they started dating or met each other, but
so Kaylynn Blue and Philip Schwab met in 2012.
Yeah.
They'd been dating for 7 years. They lived with Philip's mother. And they were both adults with disabilities. And so they lived with Philip's mom, but they were as independent as they could be. Kaylynn had a job. She worked at Walgreens. She was beloved there.
Oh, she'd worked at Walgreens for 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And had been, it was actually her coworkers from Walgreens that alerted her family that she had not shown up for work for a couple of days and was not answering her phone, Facebook messages, texts, nothing.
Which was really weird for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Very not the norm for her at all.
Oh.
And so they got really nervous. And so what had happened is that Philip's mother was out of town. So Kaylynn's family called the police and said, "Can you please go do a welfare check?"
Yeah.
Because something's wrong. No one can get a hold of her,
Mm-hmm.
and no one could get a hold of him either. He wasn't responding, and so they had to do, so they went to the house to do a welfare check, hoping that they were going to find that she'd just been sick or, whatever. But unfortunately, that is not what happened.
Yeah.
So when police got to the house, they kind of noticed that there was blood in the house.
Yeah.
And they were talking to Philip, of course.
Yeah.
But apparently they could tell pretty quickly that this was not your average welfare check, that there was blood. Like they could see blood in the house behind him as he had the door open.
Yeah, it was obvious there was something seriously wrong.
Yeah. So he apparently told the police that he might have hurt her. And then he showed them to the backyard. And he said he had buried her, which was kind of true. He had buried her in a sort of shallow grave in which her face was still visible above the dirt.
Yeah.
Which, oh my God.
Yeah.
How terrifying to find,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Law enforcement that responded to this case must have been so traumatized.
So traumatized. I can't imagine coming, for a welfare check and finding this situation. So at that point, Philip did admit that he had stabbed and killed Kaylynn. And the police put him in handcuffs and read him his Miranda rights. I mean, the solution of this case is simple. It's more of the why, I think, that is the bigger question here.
Well, and all of the how, because the way this played out on Facebook was ungodly.
It was. So Philip posted literally hundreds of Facebook statuses between Friday morning and Monday morning of the weekend that Kaylynn was killed. Some of it didn't make any sense. Some of it was actually directed toward Donald Trump, who was the president at the time. Some of it actually alluded to what he had done. Some of it alluded to the fact that he had killed the two family dogs.
Yeah.
The two dogs had been sniffing around the grave.
Yeah.
Where Kaylynn was buried. And so he killed them too. But here are some of the Facebook statuses that were very concerning. Yeah. What would I be doing with a shovel, bitch? If stabbing people is wrong, I don't want to be right. How to get away with murder twice. I'm not sure what that one means.
Yeah.
Dead is better. Good thing I have a get out of free jail card. I have a get out of free jail card. Dumb shit. I like drawing it out. You won't hurt any longer. She deserved quicker. They never said it would be this much fun. LOL. At one point, there was a message that said, "Dad, you're next." So anyway, that was only a handful of what he had posted. And it was pretty clear from his social media that he started posting things like that before he killed her.
Right.
So the only motive that's ever been actually reported by him
Mhm.
is that she was thrashing in her sleep and she hit him and it made him mad.
Yeah. And he had already placed the knife in their dresser uh,
Right.
before they went to bed. And then it sounded like maybe she had a habit of doing some thrashing around into her sleep.
Yeah.
And he said that she was hitting him by accident in her sleep. And so he got the knife and started to stab her. She tried to run. And he chased her down the hall and again stabbed her 25 times.
Yeah.
Uh, on the Facebook messages, her family said that he was known to post weird and creepy and inappropriate stuff on Facebook. That
He
anytime
was.
he
I did
watched a
some
scary
looking at his
movie,
page
yes.
and he'd posted some other weird stuff.
They said anytime he watched a scary movie, he would post play-by-plays and weird things. They also said that in person, he was like that. He really creeped them out. This part is so sad to me. These she lived in Colorado, and when she
Mhm.
met him, she told her family she was falling in love with him, and they were like, "Oh, hold the phone." They wanted her to just stay home and let them, let her live with them and take care of her and help her work and,
Yeah.
have as normal a life as she could. And she
Right.
insisted that she was in love and she needed to move to Idaho and live with this man. And they were brokenhearted. They were
Yeah.
really worried about her and about the situation. And she kept really close ties with her family, and they said that she never missed a birthday. She would always mail a birthday card and always give you a call, aunts, uncles, cousins, family. She was just so sweet and innocent and pure and beloved by her family and her
Yeah.
coworkers. Really, everyone that knew her just adored her. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how that would feel if you had a vulnerable adult like that in your life who made a decision to move to another state with someone who was creepy and weird and you were worried about it. And then for 7 years she lived with him and his mama until he killed her.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine for her family what that must have felt like every step of
No.
the way.
Yeah. Terrifying and heartbreaking for
Yeah.
sure. She she had wanted to be a mom,
Hmm.
and that had not happened for her, but her sister had a baby and I think was due for another one, wasn't she?
I
Around the
believe.
time that this happened, I'm trying to remember, but I know that there was a little niece that Kaylynn absolutely loved visiting and loved getting to be a part of her life and stuff. It just was that was a really big deal for her
Yeah.
that she loved that little girl so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a really painful situation for her family, for our community. This happened only a few blocks from me.
Yeah.
And it was just so shocking, what he'd
Yeah.
done, how he'd done it, the fact that he'd posted all this weird stuff on Facebook. And, it was one of, if not the first time that his mom had left them alone for some time while she went out of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
She didn't do that very often.
Hmm.
My heart absolutely breaks for her.
Yeah.
She clearly didn't think that he would harm Kaylynn,
No.
or she
No.
wouldn't have left them alone.
No one did. Her family said that while they didn't like him, they didn't ever think he would have harmed her. They said he acted like he was afraid of his own shadow, not somebody that would, stab somebody to death.
Yeah,
There was one article, one time, that said that he was off of his meds when this happened, but that's the only
right.
time that was ever said. And so, I hesitate to fully believe that, but there was an article that said that right in the very beginning of this. I believe East Idaho News said that right in the very beginning. But he was a volunteer at the zoo, at the local zoo, and the zoo people were stunned as well.
Yeah,
Anyone who knew this family just couldn't even fathom that this had happened.
no, no, they couldn't. And I think part of that, this is a reminder that just because someone has a disability doesn't mean that they can't do harm, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That came into that was a huge part of the um the criminal prosecution here, which there really wasn't much of one because he pled guilty, and I know
Mm.
you're going to get into that, but his disability, his IQ, that kind of thing really came to into play here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he initially pled not guilty, and they started through the proceedings, the process, and of course, as we know, especially right now, like watching the Vallow case play out, a defendant has to be able to understand the charges that are brought against them and competent to participate in their defense, right? So he wasn't. He wasn't, but it wasn't one of those things that we could send you maybe to to the mental hospital like they've done with Lori for some rehabilitation, because this was just who he was.
Right.
What they did is they allowed some special visits to the jail by his mother,
Yeah.
because she could sit with him and help him understand what was happening and what was being said, and what he was being accused of and what the process looked like. And so this dear woman had to go back to the jail many times to sit with him and help him understand things so that they could proceed.
Yeah.
And that's how they handled the fact that he initially really wasn't competent for this, but this is how they worked through that, is through these special visits with his mom to help him understand.
Right.
He did eventually plead guilty, which really spared the family. Her brother gave the impact statement when they went to sentencing, and he said that it was a huge relief to them that they didn't have to go through a jury trial, because
Oh
that would have
yeah.
been horrific and additionally painful for everyone involved and just so unnecessary. I mean, my God, there were piles of evidence,
Oh yeah.
enough evidence that they could have easily sought the death penalty. They chose to not seek the death penalty because of his disabilities, because of his IQ. And then in the impact statements at sentencing, not the impact statements, but in the statement on his behalf, it talked about the fact that because of his disabilities, and he has a chromosomal disability that really has affected his cognition. And apparently, this is something that doesn't affect everybody the same. And so some people are really high functioning with this issue, and some people are lower functioning. He's obviously on the lower functioning end. But in their in the conversation about him, as they were making recommendations, it was said that he was severely bullied as a little boy in school. And he has a pretty pronounced speech impediment, a really pronounced speech impediment, actually.
Yeah, he does.
And that he was terribly bullied and neglected as a child. And just his life has been really cruel to this man. That's not a reason for him to murder somebody. I'm not telling you, that in
No.
any way, but that's his past. And those were the things that were said at sentencing. Uh,
Well, and his IQ is 76, which is just barely too high to be considered developmentally disabled, or the older term, which is mentally retarded. He's
mhm,
just
just
on
above
a
that.
cusp of that, which kind of changes. I mean, they basically have to consider that they can't really consider him mentally retarded because he isn't quite,
Yeah.
but he's very close.
hmm
And so that was a real challenge, I think.
Yeah. I think it was really hard for the judge and the prosecutor to decide, like, what do we do with this person?
Yeah.
Because is prison the right place for him? Well, eventually they decided it is, because there's no guarantee he wouldn't do something like this again.
Right.
And he did do this, and he was very clear about him doing this. He admitted it immediately and then recalled that story over and over again. I mean, he did do it. He admitted to it. It's in black and white. It happened.
Well, and it was premeditated. I mean, if you
Yeah.
follow the Facebook page posts,
Hmm.
he was posting about it well before he did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything to do with her thrashing in her sleep. He had
Yeah.
already decided
Hmm.
before they went to bed that he was going to kill her.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
pretty
She
clear.
just turned over wrong and gave him the idea to get it going. Apparently, yeah. So what they did do was sentence him to 25 years to life in prison. They did give him time served because he was in jail for 2 years before he was sentenced. Sentencing was only at the end of June. It just happened,
Yeah, just barely.
just about 10 days ago. And that was the decision. Her family seemed to be at peace with it. They actually, the recommendation that they had given the prosecutor was to not seek the death penalty. They did not ask for that. They didn't feel like it was really appropriate in this instance. So he's, of course, now been transported to prison, to the Idaho State Penitentiary, where he will live for the next 25 years at least. And we'll see uh, if
He's
he
35,
lives.
so
Yeah, he's 35. So that would put him, well up in his years. But
about 60,
yeah, not super
58, I
old
guess.
really, but if he lives through that 25 years, I think I'll be really surprised, to be honest. But it is hard for me to imagine someone that's this disabled in prison. That's a very rough place. It makes me think about the story we did about the guy from Pocatello that was murdered in prison
Mhm.
by a serial killer, one of Idaho's worst serial killers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys remember that case, but he beat him to death with a sock full of batteries. And he was in prison for stealing a car and was quite disabled because he had tried to kill himself in high school. He tried to shoot himself and was unsuccessful and was
Mhm.
quite disabled from that. And he did not fare well in prison. And I don't suspect that this
No,
guy is going to fare well in prison either.
no.
Uh, this is a hard one. It's a hard one. I mean, he did what he did. He deserves the sentence that he got. I mean, he is a killer. And
Absolutely.
again, we
Mhm.
have no ideas that he wouldn't do something like this again, and so he is where he belongs. But it is a little tough one when you look at his disabilities and yeah, I don't know.
Mhm. It is until you remind yourself that he killed Kaylynn Blue, who was a sweet,
Yeah,
loving, kind human being
yeah,
who loved him and her family and the people that she worked with
yeah.
dearly and did absolutely nothing to deserve this. And so,
No,
yeah, it is. None of these are straightforward, are they?
no, no.
It's never
Well, and
straightforward.
then the fact that he killed both of the dogs too. He killed the dogs, put them in a
Horrifying.
trash bag, and just threw them in the trash can. Just that easy. That
Yeah,
too, all of it. Yeah. And all
yeah.
the posting on Facebook. Like it just seems so with
Oh,
zero amount of remorse or any kind of conscience attached, this act. So, but anyway, that's the sentence that he received and what's going to happen for him or to him moving forward. But yeah, it's a hell of a case.
it is. It is. It's definitely one that has captured the attention of people in our community. Certainly captured our attention.
Hmm.
And it was really watching how this played out that the idea of doing a true crime podcast started brewing in my head.
Hmm.
So, I felt like we really needed to cover it because
Yeah.
this was really an important one for us. But I do feel that at least for Kaylynn's family, that there is some kind of justice,
Yeah.
that he pled guilty, that he's been sentenced, that he's in prison. I mean, that's not going to bring Kaylynn back to them, but at least they know that he can't hurt anybody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And his family too. His poor
Yeah,
mother.
I
My God.
I know. My heart really goes out to her. I cannot imagine
Yeah.
what this must have been like for her.
Hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. When this story broke, East Idaho News, had shared some of his Facebook posts and said he made all these Facebook posts. Well, the Facebook page was live. And so everybody and their dog went to the Facebook page, Christy and I included, and we're reading through all these posts in absolute horror and seeing people making comments going, is Kaylynn okay? What's going on? What are you guys doing? And, she had posted on Friday that they'd been working in the yard and she was really tired. She had a big day at work and then worked in the yard and she was really tired and was staying in for the rest of the evening. And that was the last thing she posted. And she
Yeah.
typically posted a lot and then nothing. And people thought that was weird. So it was coworkers and friends that were looking at these posts, wondering what was going on. I still, for the life of me, can't understand how the police didn't make it there until Monday. And I'm not dragging the police. I can't understand how this behavior wasn't reported sooner, or maybe it was. And
Right.
that's very confusing to me how, or if people just were used to his weird shit, and went,
And
well,
that might be it, that
all the
because
time.
he'd posted strange things on Facebook in the past, that they didn't think that this was anything that had any basis in reality.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
I know that part really baffles me, honestly.
Does me as well.
But then, because he had basically an open Facebook page and he had been arrested, people went crazy on his Facebook page. There were hundreds and hundreds of comments on every post of the most ugly things that you've ever seen. Like it brought out hordes of people. It was like all of it was just so shocking and horrible and
It really was. Yeah.
terrible
And then people had this opportunity to be like, you,
to attack him.
you're an SOB. I can't believe you did what you did, and yeah, I don't know. There's just the
Yeah.
whole thing went down in a very strange way.
It did. It did. And then I was reading some comments on the arraignment, the news stories about with the arraignment, where we actually heard his voice for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize, whoa, like this guy is very disabled. If you came across this guy and visited with him, you would think that he was, MR. You would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from the sound of his voice and the speech impediment, and people took that as a reason to attack and say really ugly things about disabled people. And like it
terrible.
just really this incited some of the ugliest behavior out of strangers, local people that I had ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After such a horrible thing had happened.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Not that people didn't have the right to be angry and disgusted and everything, but it was shocking to see the way it all played out. Yeah.
Well, there's sometimes this implication that disabled people are less than human and that they do terrible things, or that they don't have the same kinds of thoughts and feelings as everyone else, which is completely bogus. And of course they do. We all have a disability in one way or another.
Yeah.
You gotta see me do math, you guys. But yeah, no, this idea that if someone has a disability or a mental illness, that they're more likely to harm people, which is not true at all.
Yeah.
Or that the disability is to blame, which is also not true at all. Because in this situation, the only person to blame is Philip Schwab.
Yep.
He made the choices that he made.
Yep.
And he knew. I mean, he immediately told the police what he'd done, and
it seemed as though his the way he did that was in a very deadpan way. There was no emotion. It was just like, yep, this is what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That part of it is scary to me. Because is this guy just a brewing psychopath and has been all along?
Yeah.
We don't know. But yeah, the way that he handled this, yeah, I did this. I stabbed her. I killed her. Just like nothing. Totally flat. Scary.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So there you have it. That is the murder of Kaylynn Blue.
Yeah, we wanted to share that with you. And this is our Monday case. So we will be back with 2 more
Yeah,
cases this week, along with our live streams on Wednesday and Thursday. And you should be proud of us because we both did pop-ups last weekend, and we're going to
we
be
did.
better about pop-ups. We've just been gone a lot lately, but sometimes, summer is hard. We run as hard as we can go out in the sun in this time of year because we don't get very much of it. But
Yeah,
we're doing our best. So make sure to check all of those things out if you haven't checked out our pop-ups from the weekend, and keep an eye out for some other great shows coming up the rest of this week.
absolutely.
We are True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. Thanks for being here.
Take care.